Hi everyone, this is episode 3 of my thing where I build a time tracking application from scratch with Node.js and Hypermedia. This is episode 3. If you're just finding this video, I can recommend you check out at least episode 1 for context. In the last episode, I added connects and database support. It took quite a bit, like I think an hour and a half or so. Mainly because I felt like I had to kind of learn stuff on the go. I hadn't really used that stuff before. So I thought for this episode, it's going to be a little bit lighter. And I just want to, now all those things are in place, it should, in theory, be a lot easier for me to add new APIs. So what I'm going to do, at least for now, is to build a project API. So this is a reminder. Currently you're working just on the APIs, not a front end yet. That's going to be for a little bit later. I just like to have the APIs in place. These are our main data models. So we have a client and a project, a person, and an entry. The client APIs largely exist now and have database support. And the next one I'd like to work on is a project. So I'm just going to get right into it. Step 1 for me is going to be to get a server up and running. It looks like it might already be. And let's see. This is our API. Cool. So we have a client collection. That's our list of clients. And the next step here is going to be to write the project collection. So I just made a new top level or almost top level project directory, which is where all the files are going to go related to a specific project. I also, from the home, I'd like to show a link to this collection, so it'll be easy for a developer to discover these endpoints. There you go. That's our collection. Doesn't do anything yet. Next step is I'd like to make a migration for this. I'm just going to start with the database side. So we already have an existing migration for clients, and now I'm going to make something very similar but for projects. So if I remember correctly, it's npx next migrate. There you go. Make. I'm going to call this one projects. There's an up and a down function. Up creates a new table, and up is ran when the migration runs, but if we want to reverse the migration, we can also add stuff to the down side. So I'm actually just going to copy paste stuff from client because it's going to be very similar. Instead of clients, it's projects. The only other difference between a client and a project is that a project is always associated to a client. So I will add a client ID. It's not nullable. Actually, this is gonna be, I'm kind of interested, should we use an integer, or is there another kind of thing that we should be using? Just gonna take a look in the database to see what connects made out of my earlier migration. So we have an unsigned integer field. Okay, that makes sense. So we want to use the same type for what we're now going to create. I wonder if there's something I need to do. Schema builder. I wonder if there's something I need to do to make, basically add a foreign key. Foreign keys are kind of nice. I don't always use them. Usually the integrity of the data is more or less preserved, hopefully, in the application itself too, but it's also nice if the database also does some level of enforcement to reduce the chance of bugs. Okay, let's see. Integer. First see if we can do an unsigned. No, integer dot. Unsigned. It's a method. Not nullable. Okay. Okay, and I guess now I'm making the foreign key. It's table dot foreign. Client ID. References. Clients. Dot ID. It's deferrable. Oh, it's only supported on Postgres and Oracle, so it doesn't seem like that would be necessary. Okay, I think this is all I want for now. Cool. Let's see if this works. MPX connects migrate up. No. That's too bad. Is that because connects file needs to be a TS file? Okay, that's super annoying. So this part of this needs to, sorry, the migration scripts need the connects file to be a TS file, and the regular scripts need it to be a JS file. Huh. Interesting. What if, okay, this, no. Yeah, I don't really have a good idea for this. Okay, I have an idea, and it is indeed to do something like this. So instead of using the MPX directly, I'm going to add some scripts to my package, and I'm gonna have it directly refer to this connects file in my source. Okay, so here's the main issue. I have a connects file here, .ts, if I turn to a JS, migrations will assume everything is going to be JS, and then the TypeScript won't work. If I make it TS, it won't work because it's outside of my source directory, and my TS config only compiles stuff in the source directory. So what I'll do is I'll move connects file to my source, and now I'm going to add a couple of scripts just copied from here that do basically the same thing. And this basically lets me have these files live in my source directory, which is really all I need. Okay, here we go. I hope this might already work, but it's gonna take a look at that. So now I do npm run script latest, I guess is what we want. Okay, so it also looks for migrations in my source directory. I'm okay with that. Just gonna move that to migrations to source. Already up to date. Okay, I'm very curious if that's true. Show tables. Is there a projects table? Yeah, there is. Okay, cool. I guess it already ran successfully a little bit earlier. All right, cool. So we have a projects database table. It took just a little bit longer than I thought. But we should be in a good place now to finish the rest. Okay, so we got a projects collection. So first thing we want, oh wait a minute, you restart too. And this also connects file, this now needs to be pulled from the current directory. There we go. Okay, so we got our client selection, our project selection. So for the project selection, we need two things, two routes. You need to, just like the client. And we're gonna make two controllers. So we have one controller for the item, project is a specific project, and one controller for the collection. So let's start with the collection. Cool, that's should be fine. I'm going to make the item as well. Very similar. Cool, so we got two controllers now. Each of them do nothing because they don't support any specific methods yet. So the first method we want to support on a project collection is the get method. Gets past the context, and context is all the information pertaining to the request and response. And we want to get a project service, and actually I'm going to be super lazy for that with that right now, and just copy the client service, because a lot of this stuff is going to, at least initially, be identical. So clients, cool. So the first thing I want to do here is change, I want to get a list of projects instead of a list of clients. So I also want to select from the project table. So also, if you see me type all this, like, and I'm just literally renaming the word project to client, or the client to project, you know, you might think, oh, this is a ton of boilerplate and we can totally optimize that, and you would be right. I think for a lot of these smaller APIs, that are extremely simple, have no business logic, just standard CRUD, literally nothing behind it, I think that's very true. And I think sometimes with these kind of in these kind of systems, like, the framework is maybe a little bit too hands-off for the simplest possible stuff. But then, you know, as projects evolve, there tends to be a lot less true, and there's a lot of like variation in these functions depending on what type you're working with. And because now we're literally just storing and retrieving stuff from a database, but in the future there's going to be a lot more to this. And we want to be able to have customizable business logic per type of endpoint. Cool, so we're missing a couple things. I think I got most instances of client fixed. Project would be this namespace. DB client should be DB project. We'll fix that in a sec. Cool, so next thing, I need to have a type for this project. So these are types specifically that connects users. And the main difference here was that instead of DB project, or sorry, all the same fields here, except we got a client ID field now. Also in our regular types, remember we had a client and we had a specialized type specifically for creating a new client. So we're also going to need a new project, which has all the same fields as project except those. So which literally just means that project will have name and client. Okay, so we got a couple of errors now, and I think as soon as those errors are gone, the service should be good to go. Oh, and I forgot to add a Href type to project, because every type should get an Href. Just going to add it preemptively to person and entry. So currently this is missing client, and let's see. So it's going to be a little bit tricky. How are we going to do this? Because so Connects might have like good ways to alias stuff coming from other tables. I think what I'm going to do. So here's the issue: is that my project has a table, has a client ID field, but my type in my project type, I don't want a client ID. I want a full-blown client. So to get the full-blown client, I think I just need to import my client servers. Make this async. Do I want to make this async? You know what, I'm going to do this a little differently. I'm going to make callers responsible for passing the correct client. Makes it easier later to optimize this, makes this more testable because it's no longer using anything external. But it does imply that in these situations I need to do a little bit more work. Find by ID records dot do we not like this? Oh, that's why. This part needs to be awaited. Yeah. Record dot please. Okay, let's just assume you'll figure it out later. Return. This makes sense. Expected to. Wow, this works. Weird. I should be less surprised, but this just seemed a little complex. Find by ID, same thing, but a lot simpler. Client servers dot find by ID records 0 dot client ID. Oh, and that needs to be awaited. Cool. Okay, so all my project services are done, which means that I have a find by ID and create function. Create function, okay, this is interesting because I would have totally expected client ID to be required here. But it seems like I'm not getting a TypeScript error here, so that's, I don't like that. I wonder why that might be. client ID. Looks fine. Okay, cool. I'm going to ignore this problem and look it up later. Project.client.id, because I have access. Every project now has a client object, which is very easy to deal with. Cool. No errors. Now I just need to make my two controllers. And I'm also going to cheat, because this basically all works the same for now. Okay, so we got two errors. One is formats.hell doesn't exist. That's correct because we haven't made it yet. This file is responsible for turning our objects into JSON, a nicely formatted JSON with links. And we're getting a second error that right now I'm trying to create a new project. But projects require a client object to be specified. So I'll have to get that project, basically get the client link from the request body and add it in as part of this object. So I'll also need access to the client service. Again, as you can see, we're casting to any here. It's because we don't have a request body validation yet, but that's something that I'll add. Okay, we're just going to do this the easiest possible way and assume that the request body will have a client ID property. And later on, fix this to use a link instead. Cool, my last step is to create the hell formatters, and for that I will also cheat and copy. So we have two functions here, one for rendering the collection and one for rendering the item. Cool, all this stuff largely works the same, but there's one difference. Let's take a look here first, see if this all worked. No. Project does not exist. Okay. It's because I used the name project as a table name instead of projects. Yeah, there it is. Select star from project. That's probably why client ID didn't show up here as an autocomplete. That was solely it. Cool. Good to know. Okay, there's 0 projects. That's more or less the number we expected. Let's create a new project. So we have a curl command here that sends a post to the project endpoint with an application JSON content type. The new project name is going to be the time tracking application, and the client ID is going to be 1. And again, this is not how I want to format those request bodies in the long run, but I want to get a little bit further into all the link stuff in a future episode. 201 created. Create a new project. There it is, the time tracking application. Okay, some problems here. One, it still links to client. So we actually opened that looks like it's a problem in the collection. Let's take a look at that collection. There's probably a couple things need to fix. Okay, so this looks fine. So project with Href is used here, which if that's wrong, it means it's wrong in the service. Yeah. The embedded looks right. So the last thing here I want to add is that one of the only difference between projects and clients right now is that projects are exist in clients. So I also want this project to refer to a client. Show it in a response body what client this project belongs to. So title is just going to be the name of the client, and the href we can also just get from the client object. So this is another place where adding this href to each type is very useful, because now we no longer have to really think about these URLs as much. They're just there. Cool. So we have a new project endpoint, so we can click it, and it says get is not allowed, and the reason for that is because we haven't finished the controller for this one yet. So I'm also going to cheat for that one and use some code from the client. So again, it's a get function. It has to be async. Import hell from formats hell. Should fix one error. Import context from curveball core, and import star as project service from service. I like to organize these as having a couple, as in the top ones the external packages and the next ones internal imports. There we go. There's our new project endpoint. So it has create app, modified app, the name, and it has 2 relationships. One is back to the list of projects, another one to the client it belongs to. Cool. So that is, I think, it for what I wanted to do for this episode. And the next one is going to be very similar. And the goal with the next one is to just make the person, and maybe we should also immediately do the entry APIs. Once all those APIs exist, we can move on to front-end pieces. Thank you for watching, and have a good rest of your day.